monsters at our door. The unholy relics of this conjunction. The trolls, the corpse eaters, the werewolves. Did we raise our swords against them? Or have we laid this burden on others? On so-called witches. Stray children taught the ways of foul sorcery, their bodies mutated through blasphemous ritual. Sent to fight monsters, though they could not distinguish good from evil. The flicker of humanity, long extinguished within them. Yes, their numbers have dwindled through the years, but a few still roam our lands, offering their bloody work for coin.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Witcher Monsters. I decided to make today's video on werewolves, or as you might want to call them, lycanthropes. So to begin with, a basic question you're all probably going to have. Well, potentially some of you that have clicked on this video. What is a werewolf? So a werewolf is basically a man that can assume the form of a wolf-like animal, also known as a lycanthrope. It's basically a large humanoid wolf that has incredible strength, and we'll get into all of that a bit later in the video. So, as I said, they are humans that can transform into animals, specifically wolves for lycanthropes. So what's quite interesting actually, is though people generally refer to lycanthropy as a curse, that's not actually the case, and lycanthropy is much more complicated, and never fully explained. Because I'll get into a lot of this later in the video, but let's just say that there's a lot more to lycanthropy than it just being a curse. So what I'd like to do is actually say some classifications from in-game. So first of all, these creatures are classed as cursed ones. And what that means is it's basically somebody who has been cursed into this. And it's quite funny that the game classifies them as this because, as I've said before, in not every werewolf's case is this a case. I mean, in the case of someone like, say, Morkvarg, it is the case because he has been cursed into a werewolf. But yet again, there's theories that he is only capable of being able to turn into a werewolf because of certain genes he possesses. So what I will say is that in some cases, being a werewolf is a curse, as I said with Morkvarg, but in some cases it isn't. Some people are actually born with this disease, I suppose you could call it. And generally with the curses, they change at full moon, except with Morkvarg where he was permanently changed, and you know all about that horrible curse, and I'll get into that in a later video. So allow me to explain some information on this that I've actually gathered from a very, very good book known as The World of the Witcher. I've summarised it, and I think this covers it pretty well. So, when some people change into werewolves, they are actually aware of what happens, and can control their instincts. They even avoid humans, and wait for the night to end, in a lot of cases at least. However, some, as you may expect, do actually embrace the bloodlust and let it control them, and some actually can just lose control without even realising. In a lot of those cases, they wake up the next day with blood around their mouth, not sure what's happened. You see that a lot throughout the Witcher games, where you meet werewolves who didn't realise they were werewolves, or they kind of have an inclination but they're not quite sure. This is what happens with a lot of people who don't realise. So here's something that I thought was really, really interesting for this video. So there is actually many cases of children being born with the disease, and this leaves a lot of people believing that it is actually hereditary. So say in the real world there is plenty of diseases that you can pass down through children. It happens a lot with diseases. So specifically with werewolves, it's the same case. If a werewolf has a child, their child can potentially have that gene and then also the disease, which then can make them a werewolf. So thus, it's theorised that werewolves are actually a separate magical disease, or species as you might say. An actual magical species in themselves. Werewolves are their own species with their own genes. But what's interesting is that a lot of people that can be afflicted with the curse of turning them into a werewolf, it's believed that they're only able to be turned into a werewolf because what the curse does is it activates dormant werewolf genes within their genealogy that can then turn them into a werewolf, and allow those genes to come forward. So for example, it's theorised that with Morkvarg, he might actually have some werewolf genes somewhere within his body, because as we know, the power of an exponential curve is unbelievable, so we can all assume that everybody in our world, for example, is related. So you can imagine that everybody in the Witcher world probably has some light werewolf genes somewhere in their body. So when Morkvarg's cursed, that werewolf gene activates and he turns into a werewolf. This is obviously just a theory, but it's definitely a solid theory. So something interesting is people who are born with this disease and it's activated from birth and it's part of their genealogy, they can actually control their transformations, and this can actually make it a very useful tool. For example, and I'm going to give everybody a spoiler alert in a few seconds just to click off the video if you don't want any spoilers for The Witcher 1, So, for example, Vincent in The Witcher 1 uses his werewolf powers for good. You can choose to let him live or not depending on what you think, but he actually uses it to fight crime in a way, and he uses it for good, and we can imagine he probably had it from birth or something along those lines. So something that's interesting is that removing this disease from those that are actually born with it is basically impossible. It's very, very hard to do, and if you wanted to even attempt this, you would have to have the cooperation of the werewolf, because in a lot of cases people don't want to get rid of the disease because it's actually helpful for them, but to make them normal, a lot of people might demand it of them, and then if they're not willing to do it, it's basically impossible. And what's actually funny is that some people purposely seek out other partners with the disease so they can have children that will be able to have the ability too, and this allows them to make their own, I suppose you could even call it a pack. So that's the basic information of a werewolf. Now I'm going to read a little passage which is actually from CD Projekt Red, and it's a monster introduction about werewolves. And I'm going to read the passage in its entirety. Neither animal nor man. The werewolf takes the worst from both species, the bloodlust and primal nature of a wolf, and the ruthlessness and cruelty of a man. One becomes a werewolf as a result of a curse thrown by a witch. The change itself is uncontrollable and unwilling. A man who transforms back to his human form can't usually remember the atrocious acts it committed as a werewolf. Werewolves are creatures of the night, and they are especially active during the full moon. They usually go hunting alone, as there rarely is an opponent that can match their strength, agility, and fast health regeneration. If a werewolf actually encounters an enemy that has equivalent strength and can fight a fair fight, the creature can call for wolven reinforcements that will come to its aid. A good way of dealing with werewolves is a sword covered with oil to combat cursed creatures, or a silver bomb that will temporarily block the creature's regenerative power. So that's what CD Projekt Red have said about it, and the thing is that a lot of it's contradictory. What I said earlier about werewolves being a disease that's passed on in their own species could potentially be just a theory, you know, it's not exactly confirmed, as I said. So next I'm going to go over the combat tactics, then read the Witcher 3 bestiary entry, and then that'll be the end of today's video. So the werewolf's combat tactics consist of, they're very, very, very fast, but also with the killer combo of having high damage dealers. So if you encounter one of these creatures, try and not get hit by it, and also try and avoid it and be fast, you know, be very, very fast with the buttons you click and the speed you move. So another thing you've got to watch out for is they can actually jump at great speeds and also cover very large distances with just a single jump. You'll know this if you played The Witcher, but if you haven't and you're just watching this video just to see what werewolves are like in The Witcher, be careful for this. One thing that's recommended when you fight these creatures is to use the sign Yarden, as it can weaken them because it stops any, you know, magic being used, such as their regenerative powers. So as I just mentioned, werewolves have an inborn ability to regenerate health, so it's best to try and inflict bleeding or burning damage on them to counter that, because say if a werewolf's burning and it's regenerating, the burning will actually counter that and cause the regenerating to be less than it would be. Same with bleeding. Also, a good recommendation is if you don't want to use Yarden, because obviously it's a difficult thing to cast and it means that you can't use other signs such as Quen to try and keep a shield around yourself, use the bomb Moondust. That's a great bomb and it can prevent any magical powers the werewolf has, such as their healing. Also, just in case you're having even more trouble with these creatures, try and get yourself some cursed oil. As a werewolf is classified as a cursed one, the oil does a lot of damage. So now to finish off this entry, I'm going to read the bestiary entry from The Witcher 3. Wolves aren't as bad as they're made out to be. Werewolves, though, they're every bit as bad, and worse. Elsa Vilga, Archer. Werewolves are creatures with both men and wolves inside them. When in beastly form, they take the worst traits of each. The wolves strive to kill and hunger for raw flesh, and the man's cruel and calculating intelligence. A werewolf's condition comes through a curse, and the transformations happen outside his conscious control. When he reverts to human form, he has no memory of his deeds. Otherwise, he would surely go mad and take his own life. Werewolves are active at night, particularly when the moon is full. Though they hunt alone, when threatened they will summon wolves to aid them. Werewolves rarely feel the need to flee, for few adversaries put up much of a fight against them. They strike as swiftly as lightning, with claws sharp as razors, and regenerate any damage received in mere moments. When fighting werewolves, a witcher should wield a blade covered in oil harmful to the cursed, and have a large supply of Devil's Puffballs handy. So that's also something useful that you could use against a werewolf, Devil's Puffballs. It's quite an interesting thing to use. So that's all I want to say on werewolves as a species, as a disease, as a magical creature, whatever you class it as. I will do videos on the individual stories of very famous cursed werewolves such as Morkvarg, and maybe even Vincent, he's a cool werewolf. So be sure to subscribe to look out for that. There'll be a playlist about all werewolves eventually, which will be cool. I've already started a Witcher Schools playlist. Sorry, a Witcher School the Wolf playlist, so that'll be interesting for you guys. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope you learned something new about werewolves you didn't know. I hope you're now prepared for when you go into The Witcher 3, 2 or 1 and you want to fight a goddamn werewolf. And also, witchers, remember to like the video if you enjoyed it, as, you know, it's really cool to know if you like these sort of videos I make, and it, you know, it helps me, honestly, it helps me know what you guys like, and it, you know, it's just nice to do, so thank you if you like the video. Another thing that's awesome is I would love to, if you all followed my Twitch, we're almost at 100 followers, I don't know the exact count as of making this video, but we're getting there, and when I have 100 followers, there'll be regular streams, and you guys will be able to watch me fail at Dark Souls, and many other games. I'd love to play Bioshock, for example. As I always say, be sure to join the Discord, guys. It's, honestly, it's getting cool there, we have like nearly 100 people in it now, we all talk about The Witcher, we post Witcher memes, we post music suggestions, we talk about it, everyone's really friendly, and I'm sure you'll have an awesome time. And as always, thank you to all the Patreon pledgers, or as I like to call you, the Grandmasters, as they have the rank on Discord for donating to me only $1 on Patreon. So, you guys are awesome, you're on screen now, you guys are, honestly, genuinely, every time I say this, I think you're thinking, oh, it's just his little routine now, but I genuinely, when I say you guys are awesome, I mean it. Donating to me and doing that is just so supportive, and there's nothing more I think anyone could do to be supportive of me, honestly, and it's just amazing. I mean, obviously, commenting and everything is really amazing, but the donating actual money is unbelievable. It just shows that you really believe in what I'm doing, and I'm so happy. Thank you, guys. And as always, if you want to donate, be sure to check down the description. You can donate in there, donate $1 or something. You know, I thought I have like 6,000 people to watch my video. If I got $1 from everybody, obviously that's not possible, I know that, then I'd be able to live off this, and then I'd be able to make even better videos. But anyway, thanks everybody for watching so much. I'll see everybody later. Have an awesome week, guys. Also, be sure to watch the Witcher playthrough series.